to music first, always.
We are unstoppable.
Open the frontiers to make people meet people.
Music is not fireworks. Music is feeling.
You're good to go.
Thank you, vote for the music.
This is Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast. I'm Benjamin Widdybank.
And I'm Tadeusz.
Now we continue to review the songs of the Eurovision Song Contest 2024, and in this podcast we are covering songs 1 through 8 of the second semi-final, which takes place on the 9th of May in Malta. That is songs 1 through 8. That takes us from Malta to Armenia and covers the first half of that semi-final. All of these were released as their own separate episodes as quickfire reviews over the last week or so, but here they are all collected together so you can hear all our thoughts on these songs. Once again, beginning with Malta's entry, which is Loop by Sarah Bonnici.
I'm a lamb with the bad things on. I'm a teaser, no, got you loving when I move.
Loop is exactly what you could expect from modern dance Malta. Cliché uninspired dance bop, which after a heavy revamp ended up even worse than it was at the beginning.
I mean, not to be rude to Sarah Bonnici, I'm sure she's trying her very hardest, but when I first watched the performance at the Malta Eurovision Song Contest, my reaction was, this is just a really, really poor man's version of Slow-Mo by Chanel. It's structurally the same song, just worse. The performance is the same, just worse. Even plenty of the dance moves are exactly the same. The only thing they've really taken out of it is the flamenco Spanish vibe, but apart from that, it is fairly identical. But the difference here is the song just isn't as strong, the performance isn't as slick and polished and choreographed to an inch of its life like Slow-Mo was, and I think when you're copying success, you're just doomed to fail, and I think that's exactly what we're going to get here with Malta.
If I were to look for some bright spot, I would say Sarah Bonnici is quite charismatic. She can move on stage almost like Chanel. The audience is gonna like it, fans already do.
Well, I mean, unless you're literally Theodore Andrew, the audience is probably going to lap up anything on that Eurovision stage if you know what Eurovision fans are like, irrespective really of quality. So I don't really think that's going to come into it a lot. But if we're looking at how it's going to appear on the television screen based upon the performance of the Malta Eurovision Song Contest and the choreography and the staging there, and usually how well Malta managed to glow up from national final to the contest in terms of staging and choreography, I don't expect much. I think it's going to look quite silly, it's going to look quite flat, and it's going to look quite basic. It's hardly going to be what Chanel delivered 2 years ago in Turin. It's going to look, in my opinion, a bit like a parody of that. Although it's not a parody, it's entirely serious.
This entry is bland, forgettable, poorly written, and all these standard epithets. However, it is not a disappointment. It is exactly what you could expect. Malta just has a massive Eurovision problem. They make weak selection filled with weak songs, select a weak winner who gives weak performance and ends up with weak place in the final. Rinse and repeat every year. Unless it's there when they scrap that altogether and instead buy the song from Sweden or something similar. This is the road to nowhere. Can it be fixed? I honestly don't know. The last hope was in 2023 and unfortunately it drowned among many original acts.
Yes, as you've acutely summarised, the state of Malta at the Eurovision Song Contest is not in the best position. But something I do want to highlight is the fact that Malta do seem, even though they're not very good at it, to really be trying from a loving place. And you do get the sense, watching the Malta Eurovision Song Contest, that everyone there is as friends, as colleagues, as family, and they're all pushing each other on, and they all want everyone to succeed. And I don't think you get that in many of the national finals, and that is something which I really don't want Malta to lose, because every single person in that final was happy for Sarah Bonnici to win. I would have been happy for any of the artists to win.
Regarding the qualification, no chance.
Yes, I mean, qualification is incredibly unlikely, especially as this is by far the strongest semi-final. I think the songs overall only go up from here. There are a couple of ones, but this is definitely one of the distinctly weakest songs of the semi-final. I'd be very surprised if it goes through. But potentially the fact it is opening the semi-final and might stick in audiences' minds could give it an advantage. But then again, just like we only had 2 years ago with Albania's entry Secret by Rinella, which also opened the semi-final, sometimes you can stick in mind for the wrong reasons and not get through to that final. So I believe that's probably what will happen, and I'd be very surprised if Malta is in fact in that grand final on the 11th of May. Very surprised.
And that's all I have to say about Loop, because really, there isn't anything to say about it other than stuff like, at least it's not matte black.
So those are our thoughts on Malta's entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. Moving on to number 2 in the running order, we get to the Albanian entry, which is Titan by BESA.
I'm a titan in this
When I heard Semendor in Festivali Këngës, it was an endearing ballad. Far from the great one, in fact pretty basic, but you could feel some actual passion and idea inside it. I hoped that the revamp will be able to elevate it by applying proper production and a bit more European structure. By that I didn't mean what actually happened.
I mean, to be honest, I don't really take your point. I do not agree with your view at all. I think this was a very good revamp. I wasn't the biggest fan of the original version of the song as presented in the Albanian national final. It was not my favourite in the national final. It didn't take me that much. I did not really enjoy the performance that was presented whatsoever. However, Titan, at least from the music video, I really quite like. Yes, it's nothing special, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's a nice, decent pop song and far improved, in my opinion, over what was originally presented. Yes, okay, it is generic in some ways, but there are far more generic songs in this competition. Yes, the lyrics make little sense, but I mean, we've had hundreds and hundreds of Eurovision songs with lyrics that make less sense than Titan in Disguise. So, to be honest, I'm very happy with this, and I think it is actually one of the best Albanian revamps we've had in quite a long time.
We already kind of went through this with Ronella Kayatis' performance 2 years ago, and it seems this may suffer a similar fate. Why are some Albanian singers so ashamed of being Albanian?
Okay, if you're going to make the comparison to Secret by Rinella, which was 2 years ago, which was an utter disaster, I mean, I just wouldn't, because one, that revamp was very different to this. It was pretty much just a sort of slight commercialisation of the original, but it was very similar to the original. It was still in Albania, it had a few English dropped in, but not a whole lot. And I don't think the revamp was the issue there. I think as a studio version, that was fine. The issue there was the performance was absolutely atrocious. The staging was embarrassing. The costumes were bizarre, but that is nothing you could predict from the music video for Secret. I think most people thought that was definitely going to go through to the final based on the music video. So I really don't think that has anything to do with the revamp itself, because it was absolutely everything else in that situation, which was a utter joke. I think this stands well on its own as a revamp. Yes, it has taken the Albanian language out of it, but they've entered in Albania now for the last 3 participations. That's better than most countries are going for their language. I think it's fine every few years to enter a song in English. It's not the end of the world, because every song that goes to their national final anyway is going to be in Albanian, because that's how the rules of the national final work. So I do think an English refab is not the end of the world, and I think in this situation, it works quite well.
Albania, don't turn yourself into popcorn music, no good will come out of this. The entry is a catastrophe, and if anyone, like that girl over there, gave it any chances of qualifying, they were completely squashed once it got number 2 in the running order.
Yes, we do have to bring up the running order. Obviously, the running order is not great, it's number 2, that'll make it quite unlikely to qualify, and really, as history has proven, especially in the televote portion, if you're going to qualify from the number 2 spot, which has been done before, but history has proven it has to be something really quite good, something that's really going to grab attention and is really going to capture people, because it's a very difficult slot to qualify from, and you'd have to really stand out. And to be honest, as much as I do like this and I don't agree with your criticisms, I would have to say that Albania is not the sort of entry which would qualify from second in the running order. If this was on 14th, 15th, I think it would qualify, but second is going to make it very, very tough to qualify. So for that reason, I think this probably will not be in the final on the 11th of May, sadly. But I think it is a good entry, it's a good effort, and I think Albania can non-qualify with dignity here. So those are our thoughts on the Albanian entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. But moving on to song number 3, and we get to Greece's entry, which is ZARI by Marina Satti.
You gotta respect Marina's chill guts, because performing this multi-genre spectacle will be an immense challenge. Hopefully we see her deliver. On top of that, the song features all kinds of hooks, from the repetitive chant ta in the refrain, through the adorable white vocals, to strategically placed choirs, drums and bells.
I mean, it's hard to deny the content in this song. By that I mean it has absolutely everything you can imagine chucked at it. Does it necessarily all come together and flow and work as one cohesive piece? Actually, yes, I do think this works, and I do think on stage it probably will work as well. This is very different from anything we've ever had at the Eurovision Song Contest. Yes, I would also say that, and I'd say inherently that is a risk, because there is the possibility that people might entirely just not get this, which, even though it is popular in the fandom, we've had plenty of times at the Eurovision Song Contest where things that have been popular in the fandom that are a bit different have done really well in all the fandom circles, in the odds, everything, and then when it comes to the Eurovision Song Contest, people go, what the hell was that, and then go for their generic Swedish pop song instead. So there is definitely a risk here, but I think that's one Greece are happily willing to take for the potential payoff here.
Performing ZARI will be challenged not just vocally, but also in terms of stage direction. The presentation should be just as chaotic and eye-catchy as the music video is. I really hope Marina and her team delivers, but I think they will. Of all people, Marina has experience with doing stuff like this.
Oh, I absolutely trust Marina Satti and her team to stage this very effectively on the Eurovision Song Contest. The exact way it's staged, I think I disagree with you. I think the chaos in the music video is something you perhaps don't want to bring to the Eurovision stage. Because I will admit, when I first heard the song, I saw it in the music video and I watched the music video and I went, what the hell was that? It just did not work for me at all. Watching what looks like an amateur music video with everything going on, chaos and chaos and chaos, things not matching, sound effects, everything being chucked at you, it was overwhelming, and I went, what the hell did I just watch? It took listening to the studio version on Spotify for me to go, oh, this is just quite an interesting pop song. I fear if they try and get the full-on intensity and chaos of that video onto the stage and stage it with the same mentality, you could get a lot of the audience having the exact same reaction, because they're not hearing the studio version, they're not hearing it on Spotify. They see it for 3 minutes on the Eurovision stage on the 11th of May. Have what is worth, I think the way it will be staged is probably going to be in quite a professional, quite a slick manner. I think Marina will bring that, and I think that's the approach they will go for, because the video was purposely amateurish. Or if they made the performance purposely amateurish, people will see it as just simply amateurish. But I do believe that the way Marina Satti would go is for a very professional, very slick performance, and that's exactly what they need for this song. And with that, I think it could really deliver on the 11th of May.
ZARI will qualify to the final, I'm saying that with full confidence, and may fight for a win, or perhaps it will end up at last place. But whatever its fate will be, at least it's a song that dared to dream, and be proud of what it is. My biggest thanks to Marina for delivering us something like that.
Yes, I would agree. I think if this non-qualifies, there's going to be absolute uproar. Obviously, there's always the chance it could non-qualify, the chance Europe could completely pass it by in every single way possible, but I think that is unlikely. Based on what I think is going to play out on that Eurovision stage on the 9th of May, I think this is 100% going to proceed to the grand final on the 11th of May with ease. And then I think very likely a top 10 result is guaranteed. Do I think it's going to challenge for the win? I think it's a little bit too much for the win. I don't think it has the commercial element enough that other songs have. Just that thing which is going to bring in, let's be honest, the jurors. I think if jurors vote for this, they'll be voting it based upon staging and basing on performance, and not necessarily based upon the song. And you need to be able to get jurors voting for it based on all elements, including the song. So that's why I think it probably won't win. But I think this is incredibly likely to be in that top 10 on the 11th of May. So I wish Greece and Marina Satti and everyone who's behind ZARI the best of luck. And we'll see just how this does. So those are our thoughts on the Greek entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. But moving on to song number 4, and we get to the Swiss entry, which is The Code by Nemo. So first off, we have to address the fact that the bookmakers and a lot of fans think this is going to win in May. And I would have to say, I completely agree with them. And it's not just I've been following the hype of this. This is something I felt very strongly about from the very first time I heard this. In fact, Nemo's The Code is one of the few songs after just one listen I've heard it and gone, that's going to win the Eurovision Song Contest. The other songs, interestingly, were Voila by Pravi, which did not win but did come second. Stefania by Kalush Orchestra, which we're talking pre-invasion of Ukraine, pre-Vidbeer even. It was just one of the songs in Vidbeer, and I heard that on the studio version and went, that could win the Eurovision Song Contest. Obviously, it didn't even win Vidbeer, but then scandal erupted and ended up becoming the Ukrainian entry, and then the war happened and all that. But the point is, I heard it on Voila, I heard it on Stefania, and I also heard it on Tattoo. When I heard The Code for the very first time on the morning it was released on the 29th of February, I went, that's going to win the Eurovision Song Contest. I thought it was absolutely incredible. And the time, I think it was about 15th in the odds. Obviously, it took a little bit of time, but it managed to rocket to first in the odds about a month later, where it currently very firmly stands. But fundamentally, I think The Code makes an absolutely incredible first impression. It made a very, very good first impression on me, just like Voila, Stefania and Tattoo had done. And I think that gives it a very good chance of doing the same to Europe.
The Code keeps doing immense impression both in studio version and live. I like the song, but I wouldn't give it a trophy. From my observation, the song resonates the most with the ones who went through something similar to what the Eko's message is about.
I mean, I see where you're coming from, and while it is a queer message itself, I don't think it's particularly exclusionary as well if you're not queer. It's fundamentally just a song about being different and overcoming the fact that you're different by embracing it. I mean, that can apply in pretty much any situation. I think everyone's been in a situation in life where they felt excluded, felt different, felt otherized. And this is saying, look, you can crack that code, you can get through the other side, and you can see the alternative and see what you can do as an alternative. It doesn't necessarily mean having to be non-binary in the case of Nemo, or gay or lesbian or transgender or anything else. I think it's just generally an anthem of otherness and being different, and I think it does that very, very well.
As long as the performance delivers as well. But this is Switzerland we're talking about. In recent years they deliver at maybe not outstanding, but consistently good stage direction, and Nemo already proved that they can convince the audience with their right vocals. So Switzerland has all the tools it needs to claim a win. All it needs now is a little luck.
I think most people in the fandom are fairly agreed on the fact that even if it doesn't win, it's probably going to win the jury vote, which already gives it a big boost. I think a lot of the risk in this is how well the televote will respond to this. But I think looking at the history of the results at the Eurovision Song Contest, it's very rare that we've had a non-ballad which has been very, very favoured by the juries then flop on the televote. It almost exclusively happens with ballads. And of course the Code isn't a ballad, it's a big dramatic drum and bass rap pop fusion of a song which works very cohesively actually in quite a commercial, quite a radio friendly way, which perhaps a couple of other songs in the competition don't manage that are trying to do a similar thing. Yes, a lot of this will also, I think, depend on factors such as staging and running order, but we do know the stage director for this is Friedrich Reidemann, the same person who did entries such as Heroes by Monzermolo, which of course won, Cha 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 by Carrier, which came second last year, and was also responsible for interval acts in Eurovision, such as The Grey People in 2016. So I think it's probably in quite safe hands staging-wise. Performance-wise, Nemo has proved time and time again across all the pre-parties and on TV performances throughout the last month or so that they can deliver these vocals live, and all it's done is made their lead in the odds bigger and bigger. I don't think we're going to have to worry about staging or performance, but the biggest factor is whether the Code wins or not. Whether Switzerland managed to win is how much that televote back it. And I think actually that's more going to matter as we'll talk about next week when we get to the Netherlands, just whether the juries back the Netherlands or not, because I think the Netherlands have almost certainly got the tele win in their sights. And I think a lot of this is going to come down to just how well the points add up against each other. So I think it is both of those factors in play, and we just have to see how the mathematics work out.
Despite being a bit iffy to the whole thing myself, I'll give it the credit where credit is due. This entry is overall good work of the delegation.
Obviously, as you can tell, this is 100% what I think is going to win the Eurovision Song Contest this year. It's also my personal favourite of the entire song contest and has been from the moment I first listened to it. So we'll have to see just how things do pan out on the 11th of May. But from me, Switzerland gets a very, very big thumbs up, and I really look forward to seeing Nemo live on stage in Malta. So those are our thoughts on Switzerland's entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. But moving on to song number 5, we get to Czechia's entry, which is Pedestal by Aiko.
Pedestal. A song that I have no idea how managed to win ESCZ. Look, I know there wasn't really much gold at ESCZ, but that was probably the worst possible choice. How did this win?
Okay, so we don't know for sure if this is true, but there's a theory that has gone round since the time of ESCZ that this kind of won the national final accidentally. So for those not clued in, the Czech national final ESCZ was voted on by a 70% international app vote on the official Eurovision app, and then a 30% national vote on a national website done by the Czech broadcaster. And on the Eurovision app, the voting page on there was, let's say, interestingly designed. Essentially, it gave you a bunch of squares, each with one of the songs on it. And if you clicked on the square you wanted to vote for, then you'd voted for it. Now, a lot of people who hadn't even watched National Final went onto the official Eurovision app and saw this page and went, oh, I can vote in the Czech National Final. So they saw all these squares with each song on it, and they saw Pedestal by Aiko, which was song number 1, saw the picture, saw the square, and clicked on it, thinking you'd hear a bit of it. You'd get the option to get a snippet or something or more information. And once you did that, you'd voted for Pedestal by Aiko. And you couldn't remove your vote, you couldn't change it, you couldn't vote for another song. That was your vote done. Despite Pedestal not being anywhere near the fan favourite, it was 4th down on the Eurovision World Poll, for example. The votes it managed to get were 33,000 on the international app vote, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look at the second amount of votes on the international app vote, it was 7,000. It managed to get 33,000 versus 7,000. Now that could be entirely legitimate, but considering the fact the app was badly designed at best, and considering the fact that Pedestal was far, far from the fan favourite, and considering then the fact that most of the people who voted on the Eurovision app would have been Eurovision fans, not locals, it is slightly bizarre to think it won for any other reason. But in spite of that, whether it should have won or shouldn't have won, I actually really quite like this.
Full disclosure, I despise this song. Another bloody self-pride anthem, except rock this time, full of shouts, dissonances, and looping of the shouts and dissonances. This sounds like post-No Doubt Gwen Stefani, but worse off, Aiko sounds like post-No Doubt Gwen Stefani. Her voice is sick and hard to listen, and the national final performance was a disaster.
I mean, yes, despite passionately wanting to defend this song, and I think it does work very well in studio, and it does work very well in the music video, on the stage, in the Roxy, in the ESCZ, it was terrible. I mean, the performance was absolutely atrocious, and there's no way you can defend that. But let's not forget that the production and the sound engineering in ESCZ worked against absolutely everyone. And yes, Aiko's vocals were a bit rusty, but certainly all those other factors did not help. Rehearsal time very likely wouldn't have been much. It was being done out of a hired club. She very likely didn't expect to win. There's all these factors. When you come to the Eurovision Song Contest, you get numerous rehearsals on stage in Malta, let alone all the rehearsals she would have been doing since December when the national final took place. I think it's certainly possible that a repeat of that won't happen. And let's not forget that even just casting back to last year, the performance that BESA gave in ESCZ themselves was, I think, about the same level as what Aiko gave. Really not very good at all. But then they came 10th at the Eurovision Song Contest. So I think that as long as Aiko gets her vocals right, I think this is a good enough song to carry her through to the final and get a decent result, because I think it's a really good song. And I get that you don't like it, but I think there's a lot to it. There's a lot of appeal there. It's good. Get that performance and staging right, and we're on to something very promising.
The production on the music video is actually pretty good. The song has resonance and memorability. It will be very interesting to see how they stage this, because it seems they're going to go full dance bop, with the bridge even implying there's going to be a dance break. That means Aiko is going to have a hard task ahead of herself, delivering both dance routine and good vocals. She probably is going to fail.
I'm not sure where you're getting this idea about the staging from, about it being staged like a dance spot, because I mean, I just don't think that's true at all. I don't think the Czech delegation have that intention. The song is an Olivia Rodrigo-esque rock song. It's very likely going to be delivered in that way. You know, I think we pretty much know there's going to be a backing band. I think that the bit you're describing as a dance break, I mean, it's not a dance break, it's a moment. I think most described something like what Slovenia did in 2018 with Havana Net, is having a break for the audience to hype up and to whoop as it just builds up. We've seen her at pre-parties perform it, standing sort of still and then moving her arms upwards. You seem to be portraying it like it's going to be staged in the same way as We Will Rave, and I think that's entirely false and not going to be the case at all. I don't think she's going to have to dance, to be honest. I think, yes, you have to do a bit of a routine in the case of, you know, knowing where to stand, knowing what cameras to look into, but everyone has to do that.
I trust my co-host enough not to cross out Pedestal's chances to qualify completely, and Czechia proved recently that it knows how to make its way to the final, even against the odds. At the same time, I just don't feel it personally, and that's pretty much how I can summarize all this song.
As I think I've made it clear, I do feel it. I really like it. I think qualification will depend on the performance, but I think if she rehearses it well, if she gets that vocal right, I think this will easily be in the final. And I think it can be on track for a fairly decent result, because I think it's a good song, and I think there definitely is a target audience for it that would definitely vote for this. So those were our thoughts on the Czech entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. But moving on to the next song in the running order, which is song number 6, we get to Austria's entry, which is We Will Rave by Kaleen.
When the darkness hits and we can't be saved, we will rave. When our hearts are burning, we feel no pain.
So We Will Rave is a big dance anthem banger of a song. I mean, from the title, We Will Rave, you might have guessed that. It's properly going back in time to late 1990s Eurodance, which actually really didn't touch the Eurovision Song Contest much at the time. There were 2 entries really that embodied that. That was You Are Just a Little Bit by Gina G, which while was a worldwide hit, only finished 8th for the UK. Additionally, there was also another Eurodance song in that year as well. Germany entered the song Planet of Blue, which controversially, very famously, did not qualify to the final, ending 24th in the trial semi-final that was held that year. So Eurodance at the time, in the late 90s, didn't do particularly well, but a few songs have tried since then, and still they haven't done particularly well. But will We Will Rave be different? People like the song, is doing quite well in the odds, potentially could get a good result.
The questions arise around Kaleen herself. While she has experience with standing performances on Eurovision stage, will she be able to carry a song vocally?
Yes, this is something I do worry about as well. Notoriously, big dance songs like this are very hard to pull off at the Eurovision Song Contest, whether it be performance-wise, staging-wise, lighting-wise, camera work-wise. It's very hard to get the energy of a song like this on stage and make it work through the screen while performing it live. What does help Kaleen, I think, is the fact that the Austrian delegation seem to push their luck as much as possible with the amount of pre-recorded vocals on the backing track, as we can hear from the newly released karaoke versions, which are indicative of the backing tracks they're going to have at the contest. And let's just say there's a lot of pre-recorded vocals on the backing track, so much that it's hard to distinguish the karaoke version from the actual studio version. So, I mean, that surely will help Kaleen out as much as possible. But perhaps it could also work against her, because perhaps the audience might see the fact that she's not really singing that much and might vote accordingly.
Questionable is also the quality of Austrian music video, which suffers from heavy Paul W.S. Anderson syndrome. But the biggest question is the song itself. It's a prime example of fast food music. Not much work has gone into composition. Plenty of work, however, went into production. Filters, loops, choruses, samples, all the good stuff. Every ounce of the song's cubature has been filled with sound.
And I mean, I think it would be, although awkward, dishonest not to talk about the reason why this song sounds the way it does. And I think very simply, that comes down to 4 names. Anders Refhoff, Jimmy Joker Formfelt, Julie Argard, and Thomas Stengard. They are the 4 songwriters of this song. If those names are familiar to you, they are 4 of the most prominent Swedish songwriters at Melodifestivalen, which is Sweden's national final, and they've also been responsible over the years for many Eurovision songs from Sweden and abroad. This song, as we know full well, as very freely announced by Kaleen herself, was written for Sweden's national final, Melodifestivalen, and didn't make it into Melodifestivalen because the producers at SVT did not think it was one of the 30 best songs in the competition.
It's enough to get the party started, and it was enough to make waves all around the fan community, gathering ironical fan base, which quickly turned into unironical fan base, because irony is not the thing that you want to use on the internet. And every song will find people who genuinely like it. However, will the people watching the live show in Malmo like it? This is absolutely up to live performance, which puts even more responsibility on Kaleen's shoulders. And she doesn't have to perform just okay. She has to perform really well, because contrary to what one would believe, party songs are very hard to pull off live. The song relying on autotunes and electronic addendums usually doesn't translate particularly well to live on stage performance.
But I think we've got to address the elephant in the room. We kinda went through this already, just 2 years ago, with Halo by Lumix and Pierre Maria.
An electronic dance song heavily demanding from live performer, major issues with live performance spotted at the time of pre-parties, dramatic attempts to salvage them, automatically resulting in failure and non-qualification. Did Austrian delegation not learn their lesson? Or maybe we underestimate them, and they already have a plan in motion to deliver a spectacular performance in Malmo.
I mean, I think that plan is going to be trying to use the camera work as best as possible to deliver a rave, because from what I've seen of Kaleen's pre-party performances, she's a bit stilted. I mean, she's obviously trying, but I don't think her energy is translating on screen from the pre-party performances I've seen. So I think they are going to use the lighting and the camera work, everything they can. I think we're going to have fast epileptic cuts. I think we're going to have the cameras moving all over the place, making us almost want to vomit with motion sickness. I think absolutely that's going to be the way they're going to try and translate the energy of this on stage. And, to be honest, it could work. This is a televote only semi-final, and this could absolutely get those televotes if they manage to get that energy across. If enough people at this time in that target audience, which, let's be honest, I think is probably going to be people who were teenagers in the 1990s watching now as probably parents, I think they're the ones that are actually going to end up voting for this. And if it gets through, it'll be because of them. But the song itself, actually, although it's not one of my favourites in the competition, I think it's fine. I think it's decent. I don't think it's anything particularly poor. It has been written with a certain formula, and a certain formula that works. It's not the most inspired thing in the world. Kaleen's version of it doesn't particularly elevate it, but it's a decent, solid Eurodance song.
In fact, contrary to what you might think from my generally negative review, I actually don't hate this song. It's quite an okay song. Fun to listen. We just saw far better stuff on Eurovision.
So those are our thoughts on Austria's entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. But moving on to the next song in the running order, we get to song number 7, which is the Danish entry, Sand by SABA.
Sand is just a boring song.
Okay, don't mince your words there. Straight out of the gate with it, are we? However, that being said, while I wouldn't put it quite like that, I would have to agree the song isn't the most interesting or imaginative in the world. Compositionally, it's pretty much the definition of generic.
SABA is undoubtedly a charismatic performer. She fills the stage with her voice alone, and is often mentioned as a main reason why the song is so well liked. I kinda see this argument, but the song itself doesn't work to such an extent that frankly I'm not sure that's enough to save it.
I would say the same. I think SABA's performance is fine. It's good. I will say that I have seen the song perform live. I saw SABA perform it at the Malfest weekend pre-party, and her performance was good. It was solid, but The performance didn't really captivate the room. We were all enjoying it because, of course, we were seeing a Eurovision 2024 song being performed. But there was kind of a sense of, can we get to Luna, can we get to Sylvester Belt now? Which I don't think SABA necessarily would have enjoyed, but she put on a good, decent performance. The problem is, the song is weak. So as much as SABA performs it well, and as much as I genuinely like SABA as a person a lot, the song really lets this down. And at the end of the day, it's a song contest.
Is that unimaginative? Give me one part of the song that you really like. I challenge you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I'm sure there are people who are listening who could be able to name something. But for me personally, yeah, there's not much, is there? SABA is what I would say, to be honest. And I don't think that really counts. Now, I have seen this song being described as someone screaming the word sand for 3 minutes in a row. And although I wouldn't say screaming because I think SABA sings it quite eloquently, they're not far wrong. And I think, just as we spoke about yesterday when we looked at Austria's entry, We Will Rave, the problem comes down to something very similar, and that's the fact this song was written by Jonas Fander and Melanie Webb, both of which Swedish songwriters associated with Melody Festivalen. Jonas Fander previously being responsible for entries at the Eurovision Song Contest, such as Amen, which was Austria's entry in 2021, which did not qualify for the final. Bigger Than Us, which was the UK's entry in 2019, which came last in the final. And Lithuania's entry, I've Been Waiting for This Night in 2016, which, to his credit, did come 9th place in the final. Melanie Webb as well, she competed in Melody Festivalen last year, for example, as a solo act. We do know, and it has been confirmed, that this song was originally submitted and intended for Melody Festivalen, but did not make the final 30 shortlist, as the producers at SVT did not think it was one of the 30 best songs in the competition. So the song ended up being submitted to Dance Melody Grand Prix instead, where it was paired up with SABA and ended up winning the competition. However, unlike We Will Rave, I think this lacks any sort of personality. I think We Will Rave a lot is saved by the amount of fun it's having, whereas this, to go back to what I've seen described, it's someone singing the word sand over and over again, aimlessly into the void for 3 minutes, and that's just about it.
It's the song that happens and then it ends. Well, that's not enough for me. So is this going to qualify? Well, yes, quite likely. Telephone vote decides, and if every audience I have come across says it's going to qualify, then it's going to qualify, whether I like it or not.
I mean, I don't actually take your point there. Although I agree with you about the song, I don't agree about its qualification chances. I really don't think they're all but assured. I think if there had been juries in this semi-final, then it probably would squeak through. But really, do you really honestly think enough people are going to pick up the phone and pay money to vote for this when they could vote for, even just for what we've just had on, Austria, for example? They could vote for Switzerland or Greece. They could also vote for songs we've got coming up, such as Norway and the Netherlands, or even Estonia. This really falls down to one of the songs that are right at the bottom of the pile, are songs that are really going to encourage people to spend money to vote for it on. There's nothing about this that's selling you, I want to vote for this. And I don't think it's going to non-qualify because it's bad. I think it's going to non-qualify because people simply forget about it, and people just won't notice it. So I absolutely think this is a non-qualifier. I think the reason people potentially think it's qualified is because it sounds like quite a safe Swedish pop song, and as fans, we learn all the songs, we listen to all the songs, and then we rank accordingly based on quality. And I think by default, this has a certain amount of quality just because of its production, whereas I think when it comes to an actual televote, it's not going to survive that. And I think this could get a very, very low televote score, and I would be immensely surprised if this gets into the final.
This is the kind of music that should disappear from Eurovision forever, putting efficiency above art, and completely distorting what it is to be a piece of music.
Well, I certainly wouldn't be as harsh as you about it, because I don't viscerally hate this, or even have a problem with its existence. I do think the fact that it is so bland And so unremarkable obviously is a problem in terms of it being in the competition. However, for what it's worth, I think it's fine. I think it sits quite comfortably right in the middle of the ranking. It's entirely inoffensive, and that kind of is its problem. So those are our thoughts on the Danish entry for this year's Eurovision Song Contest. Now we come to the final song in the first half of this second semi-final, which of course is the Armenian entry. That is Jako by LADANIVA.
I was heavily hyped for Armenia this year. This band won me over very quickly. Jacqueline has such immense charm and stage charisma that they would have qualified if they didn't sing anything on the stage. On top of that, I loved their most popular song, Sakara. I was really curious what they have in store for Eurovision. So imagine my disappointment when it turned out what they have in store is literally what they already have stored. Specifically Jako, one of the songs fleeing their album. Before it was announced as a Eurovision entry, it was the least popular song in the entire album. I guess Jacqueline and Ben thought that it is underrated.
Now I have a theory as to why they chose this song in particular. Obviously there are questions as to why they just didn't make a new one altogether, but the reason why I think they looked at the album and went, this is the song for Eurovision, is because I think they're betting on trying to recreate the success of what Moldova did 2 years ago when ZARI returned to the contest and sang a frankly ridiculous, entirely balmy, fairly amateurish throwback to 2000s Eurovision, and then managed to come second in the televote because it was so different to anything else in the contest. Also helped it came after a long string of ballads, which meant it woke everyone up who had fallen asleep. But it was a big success story, and I think they looked at Jako on their album and went, this is a song that can do exactly the same. It sounds like it's from Eurovision 2008, to be honest, a time when half the songs sounded like this, and it was entirely overpopulated with this kind of stuff. But now, nothing else is like this. Eurovision has changed quite a lot, and Armenia going, okay, we're going to do something a bit like this again. And I think they're betting that it will pay off because of how different it is, because of how unique it will sound. Even though it isn't the strongest thing in the world, I think they know that they could just pull off a 3-minute, really solid performance of fun that everyone would just be up and dancing around their living rooms to. So that's why I think they chose Jako as the one to go to Eurovision with.
Some of LADANIVA songs are not listener-friendly or just straight up boring. Jako, on the other hand, is quiet, pleasant for the ear, and provides us with 2.5 minutes of quiet a good time. We can sing and dance along to the sound of ethnic Armenian instruments, and feel the general feeling of festivity. So while it's not the worst choice for Eurovision, is it a good choice for Eurovision? Why didn't LADANIVA just write a new song? I just find sending an album song to Eurovision very inappropriate. While Jako is quite a fun ride, and Jacqueline's energetic performance obviously turns it up to 11, it still falls short of my expectations. At the end of the day, it is mostly going to fill the space during its semi-final, just as its original album. Does it qualify?
Oh, come on, absolutely. They would have to really mess it up for this not to qualify. This is a televote only semi-final. This is going to create 3 minutes of fun on stage. It's going to grab people's attention. It also really appeals to the Eastern vote as well. It has everything it needs to get people to pick up their phones and vote for it. So, yeah, of course this is going to qualify. And I think when it actually does get to the final, this will be a big surprise for people with just how high that televoter gets. If successful, and it manages to do the same that Moldova did 2 years ago, which, by the way, no one expected to be second in the televote, I think this could get significantly high up that televote leaderboard. As for the juries, it's doubtful to get a whole lot of points, but if they manage to vocally pull it off and put on quite a slick performance, I don't see any reason why the juries might not throw it something. Whether I absolutely think the televote is 100% going to rally behind this in both the semi-final and the final.
It's not the kind of music we see often in Europe, and that helps it. But this is Armenia. This is LADANIVA. You people can do better than this. We saw LADANIVA doing better. We saw Armenia doing better. Look at what Net delivered last year. Jako as an entry is somewhat of a capitulation, because it stands absolutely no chance of winning the competition. And I think Armenia has means to fight for a win at Eurovision.
Yes, I mean, obviously there is the point that it does seem like Armenia aren't trying for a win, but they're also giving us something pretty solid that's going to definitely appeal to a certain type of voter, and they know that is going to appeal to a certain type of voter. They're here to have fun, see if they can get a good result, and represent Armenian culture and Armenian values. So I don't think a win is actually important to them right now. And you know, there's also loads of countries who aren't really trying to win, and they're entering far worse stuff than this. So I'm personally very happy with it. It might not be the best song from their repertoire. Yes, it might not be the most intelligent thing in the world. Yes, it might sound like a naff throwback to a Eurovision of a bygone age, which I was never particularly fond of in the first place. But for what it is, I think it works quite well, and I think it will be quite a nice, joyous 3 minutes to see during the semi-final and hopefully the final. So thank you for listening to all our thoughts there on the first 8 songs in the second semi-final of this year's Eurovision Song Contest. We'll be back tomorrow with our quickfire reviews continuing through the second semi-final into the second half, beginning with Latvia's entry for the contest, or you can come back in a week's time to listen to all our thoughts on those songs collated together just like this. But until then, thank you so very much for listening, and remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, or wherever else you might get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube, where you can subscribe to us, leave a comment down below, or give us a like. You can also interact with our Q&As on Spotify if you'd like to give us your thoughts on just what you think about these songs. But until then, thank you so very much for listening, and remember to vote for the music.
This is to music first, always.
We are unstoppable.
Open the frontiers to make people meet people.
Music is not fireworks. Music is feeling.
You're good to go.
Thank you, vote for the music!
This is Vote for the Music, the Eurovision podcast.